My name is James P. Roberts. Most people call me Jim. I go by that name. I am an educator, I am a teacher, I'm a historian, and I am a volunteer. My mother always said, just be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else that you're not. Tell the truth, always tell the truth, and when you can, help somebody, volunteer. So I have a lot of volunteers in my family. Starting with my father, my grandfather on my father's side, they were in Fauquier County. I don't know too much about where they originated from originally, but my grandfather at a very young age came to Leesburg with his mother. And on my mother's side, my great-great-grandfather was a slave. He was born on a plantation about 15 miles from here in Upperville, Virginia, outside of Upperville. And he was owned by the Morse family. He was born in 1821 and died in 1912. He was absconded by the Union Army off of that plantation and carried off to Alexandria to help build Fort Ward, which was in Alexandria overlooking Washington, D.C. He was a miller, and he was only one of the few slaves on the plantation that could read and write because he had to run the sawmill. He died in 1912. At the end of 1912, my grandmother and my mother, and all, she was 12 years old, they moved to Leesburg. And they moved to Leesburg. The reason she moved to Leesburg was because that was the only place around that close that had a school, and she wanted her kids to be educated. So all of my mother's and siblings and all went to the Union Street School in Leesburg. So that's my roots. And when I graduated high school, I went in the Navy. And then when I got out of the Navy, I came back and settled here in Middleburg. In the meantime, I had met my wife, because we were childhood sweethearts, as to say. We knew each other all the way through high school. So when I came back here, we got married. We had our reception here in Middleburg. It's one of the fond memories I have of Asbury is getting up, going up on the second floor, ringing that church bell to summon the people to church. I mean, these bells rang at Asbury and Shiloh and this church, the church bells rang every Sunday morning. And the kids coming to Sunday school wanting to learn. I think some of your people that lived here in Middleburg that you're going to interview, I taught in Sunday school. It was great times. And I don't think that can be lost. I want them to pass that on to their children and their grandchildren. The churches and the community center, what I could say, the three of them together was a magnet for the African Americans in this area. If you want to go somewhere or do something, everything happened at the Master Street Center or Asbury Church or Shiloh. And the school, which is the Master Street Center, which was a Grant Elementary School, they built Banneker and they made the Grant School a community center back in 1948. 47, 48, yeah. When Banneker was built in 1948. I was on the board of directors at the community center, and they ran summer programs for children here in Middleburg. Of course, we have to remember now there was segregation then. There wasn't no integration, it was segregation. They had a pool up there to the other community center, but they didn't have a pool for the African Americans. I was living in the Parsons at the time, which is across the street from Asbury. That's the Parsons. My wife and I were living there. That was in November. We were newlyweds. We'd gotten married in August of that same year. And this knock came on my door. And they said, we just held a meeting. We're going to form a Boy Scout troop. And they said, why don't you be the scoutmaster? I said, me be the scoutmaster? I said, I don't know anything about being a scoutmaster, but there that little little thing tap on the shoulder was, you know, and that was my mother saying, you go on to do it, because I was outdoorsman, and I liked the outdoors. I hunted and I fished and I did all that, and I said, yeah, I'll be the scoutmaster. So that was the form of the troop. Banneker PTA sponsored the Boy Scout troop, and we had boys from, seemed like they crawled out of the woodwork to join the troop. And I later on found out the reason why. The reason why they joined, because they had a sense of belonging. In 1968, I carried 14 boys to camp. None of them could swim. None of them out of that bunch could swim. And I just said to myself, all these boys are going to learn how to swim while we're at summer camp. Even if it's just beginners, you know, everybody should learn how to swim. So our appointment to go to the lake in the mornings was like 7 o'clock for my troop. So I had to go with them to learn how to swim, to work with the instructors. We did that for a whole week. At the end of the week, I felt like I had gills, because every single time I was in the water with those kids. And right today, there was one parent in there said, my son is not to get in the water. He can't swim. He's not to get in the water. I said, yes, ma'am, I'm going to follow your orders. Well, of course, when she's here in Middleburg and I'm 200 miles away, she's not going to know. So he went in the water, he learned how to swim, and he never did tell his mother that, even up until she died. But he still knows, all 13 of them boys know how to swim when I left that summer camp. And I think that was one of my greatest achievements to us, because it's a life-saving thing that they learn. They can pass it on to other people. And I have a lot of them right now that got kids of their own, and I see them in church or wherever, you know, on the street, and they're saying some of the best days of my life was with the Boy Scouts, you know. And so that's how I did it. I've spent over almost 50 years with the Boy Scouts. I'm back in it now because my grandson's in it. I had to break out my uniform, so I'm back into scouting again. We went camping last weekend, and all that rain, I hadn't forgotten everything. It was just, you know. Went to church with Mr. Johnny Moten. He was a taxi driver here in Middleburg. He went to church there, and I went to church there. So I got to know him pretty well. And one day he drove the taxi, and he was sitting outside the church there. We had an all-day meeting, and it was where two big trees used to stand in front of Mount Asbury. And the stumps were there, and they were about the 8 high. And we come out during the break, and we were sitting there on the stump, and he was sitting there, and he said, come here. I said, yes, Mr. Moten. He said, I want you and your wife to come on and live with me. I said, huh? We were living at the Parsons at the time. He said, yeah, I'm living in a house by myself. And we lived with him for, I think, 3 years, and he passed away. And we had the privilege, not the privilege, but the opportunity to buy the house, so we bought the house after he passed away. But it was just close to show you how, when you carry yourself in a manner that it's going to get people's attention. Because I tell my grandson Jackson, somebody is always watching you.
What has been lost?
What has changed, I think, has to be with, I hate to say the word, is money. That was a change right there. It was, of course, this Middleburg is an affluent community. A lot of wealthy folks live here. Horses and foxes, they dominate everything. And most of the African Americans here work for these wealthy people. If they didn't work in the house, they were domestics, or they worked with the horses and the fox hunting and what have you. When that was it. And the children that's coming along, those who were in high school or what have you, they couldn't see in the future. They didn't want to do that. They didn't want to work in nobody's kitchen. They didn't want to work there, do what their parents did. They wanted something better. And that's why the parents, bless their dear hearts, got Douglas High School going, so that they would their kids wouldn't have to do what they were doing. So when they graduated from high school, there was nothing here for a graduated high school African American to do. They weren't going to go back in the kitchen. So they floated off to Washington and left here, and just some went to New Jersey and moved out. And the properties that they had, they were buying it up, and the prices of real estate just went through the roof. We couldn't afford that. We couldn't afford a job, commuting back and forth to Washington and hold on to your property with taxes and the whole bit. So they just moved out. So that's why a lot of them just gave up and, like I say, money. It was my pleasure to share what I know about Asbury, Middleburg, surrounding areas, and it was great times. And I don't think that can be lost, and I want them to pass that on to their children and their grandchildren, because down the road somebody's going to ask, what happened here, what happened there, and you should be able to tell them what happened in your community and what it was like. I think Asbury will educate a lot of people in the future. It really will.